I'm moving forward every day, Jesus. I just let him lead the way every second, every minute, every hour of the day. I'm moving with Jesus every day. 24/7 with Jesus every day. 24/7. I'm moving with Jesus. I'm moving with Jesus every day.
Lay not up for yourselves treasures in the earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust doth not corrupt, and thieves don't have chance to break in and steal. Is this a form of gambling? Well, you will hear the answer to this question and all other questions related to gambling as we engage in, not a gambler, but Dr. Clive Percival Dottin. Thank you for taking the time to drop by mortals such as us, such as we are.
I'm privileged to be with fellow mortals.
Dr. Clive Dottin, you are noted for making revolutionary statements. You might prefer to say revelationary statements. I'm sure as it relates to gambling, one such statement you would have made in recent times in a particular forum had to do with casinos, and it being, or the casino being one of the largest washing machines in Trinidad and Tobago, etc., etc.
I made that statement last year in the Senate when we were debating a particular bill. I was, sometimes I act as an independent senator, and I was saying that the greatest washing machine in the world happens to be the casino. I mean, it engages in heavy money laundering. In Trinidad, that has a particular, impact, because what you could have is that people with legitimate business are also owners of casinos. And Mr. Imbert brought to that point during the post-budget fallout, if you please, so that immediately gambling comes into sharp focus. One of the problems you have here is like with the drugs. You have legal drugs and you have illegal drugs. And we're talking about addictive personalities coming in here. So you have alcohol that is just as damaging, and tobacco, taking 5 million lives a year. And then you now have gambling under focus, casino gambling, etc., etc. But you also have legal gambling. The lottery, for example, is on a national scale and scope. So that is one problem you have. And I say that because it impacts upon young people. You're trying to play with our minds. You're messing with us. How it could be legal and illegal at the same time? Only when you say it's legal, illegal. And that goes to things like the playway, etc., etc.
How would you go about defining gambling? What is gambling? What is the gamble?
That gambling is taking a risk, all right? Taking a risk, investing resources that most of the time you're calculated to lose. And let me tell you why that is important. For example, there are syndicates that play the lottery, all right? And those syndicates, because they could buy more tickets and invest more, all right? The problem you have there is that you stand less of a chance of winning. So that is an important thing to understand. And of course, I should tell you, gambling is listed as a very addictive practice. That's right. There are people who are in a search for the almighty dollar. They're in a search to win. They want to win at all costs. And sometimes you win and you think you will keep on winning. And there is an addictive profile that fits in, psychological profile, that fits in very snugly with the issue of even gambling, as in narcotic gambling, and narcotic use, as in games of chance, whether it's casino or horse racing. Once you win, you get, it kind of whets your appetite, and you feel to make some more, and you feel you could strike the jackpot again and again and again. And it's amazing to understand that there's a reversal psychologically, because the more you lose, the more you think you're closer to winning. That is the psychological reasoning. For example, and I heard the Minister of Finance say this, You're talking about slot machines all over, in restaurants, in hotels, and what have you there. And the psychologists have said that before, that slot machines and things like that, depend on what is called in psychology operant conditioning.
Right.
You press a lever, you could get a reward. All right? It seems just a touch away.
Right.
Okay? So that what is happening in Trinidad is become a very pervasive thing, where it is owned and managed, the institutions for gambling, by locals, but also by foreigners.
Right.
And the whole issue of increasing the taxation, almost doubling the taxation, has had a particular reaction from workers in the gaming industry.
Right.
But of course, the other problem we have in Trinidad is that you have an increasingly younger set of people who engage in it.
Right.
For example, that 16 to 20 age range. And you have heard over and over, Mr. Manning was the first man to get on board in this thing of attacking the gaming industry. Because he said they were illegal.
Okay.
Private clubs were legal, but not the casinos.
Right.
And up to now, the air is still rare when you're discussing that. But the issue of casinos saying they provide counseling, and when you reach a certain level and take a certain level of risk, well then, you know what I mean? They will stop you. I mean, I don't know. I would like to hear how many times anybody has been stopped.
Right. Right.
And I mean, you remember Dana Sitar, the last place she left before she was shot and killed, happened to be a casino. Huh?
So would you say that the gambling industry has the potential to be a very lucrative industry?
Of course. And I think the government operatives who say that, I mean, you can't fault them at all. It has that. And I mean, some people are saying that when you have a legalized casino gambling, that's for the rich and the famous and for tourists.
Right.
But, if you look at through the Caribbean, there are people who have been reduced to what I would call in my lexicon, the Dottin's lexicon, pauperhood. You know what I mean? People have been reduced to that, and there is a relationship between gambling and crime and violence.
Oh.
For example, let's look at the issue of kidnapping.
Right.
There are a number of kidnappings in this country that took place, and I mean, part of that was to pay off debts, you know what I mean? They threatened people with that, and they would hold people's relatives until the debt is paid.
Right.
The issue of depression and suicide. Okay. Now, the clinical psychologists are very clear on that.
Right.
The issue of gambling, depression, and suicide, because you're taking a risk. And, there are two experts in the world, two psychologists in the world. I think they're both passed, Lal and Lal. They've written on something called the addictive personality profile.
Right.
And they mention certain issues, the high RQ,
right.
Risk quotient. And they mention the issue of having a dependency personality. You grew up in a particular kind of way. And then, the issue of accountability, the issue of working hard for a living,
right.
the issue thinking that you could accept responsibility for consequences when you
right.
take an action.
Right.
All right? And that rarely gives you the anxiety levels, all right? The thirst to quench boredom. All of that is linked into that personality.
What is this about risk that attracts people?
Well, I was in Santo Domingo once, and I went to a casino. Now, I'll tell you why I went to the casino. There was a church meeting that bordered, just adjacent to the casino. And we were a lot of these poor countries.
Right.
I mean, you see the proliferation of casinos like nobody's business. And there always is that tendency, all right? Should I say that carnal tendency?
Right.
To acquire what you didn't work for. Now, the biblical philosophy is very clear on that.
Right.
By the sweat of your brow, you should earn bread.
Okay.
All right? And I want to make that very clear. The Bible pushes hard work, since thou a man, diligent about his business, he will sit among kings.
Come on now.
All right.
Come on now.
So that is important. The issue of, accepting responsibility for earning, for success, and not going through the shortcuts.
Right.
Gambling is a business whereby you're not working for it really, but you're spending it,
right.
and you're hoping to achieve what you didn't work for.
But is there also a question of, the thrill of risk?
I believe so. And then when you go into, you might not have been, you're a bit of a pious Martin Luther kind, but when you go inside of
Thank you,
a casino, praise the Lord, the glitter,
Right.
It's like a mix of a disco and a financial game. And it is captivating, it's alluring. People are always in there. I mean, you don't even consider that the mafia is behind a lot of these institutions. In fact, there's a symbiotic relationship between the mafia and the gaming industry and the drug industry. Because the godfathers of the drug trade will also be heavily investing in that kind of situation. And when you have high-profile people like presidents of countries, you know, who would have been known to be great casino owners, and that's their major business, it lifts the profile of the institutions there. But it is a very serious thing. I have heard of wives, and there's the indirect hurting of a family. So what will happen is that sometimes, you know, a wife will give her husband money to spend, and she's a chronic gambler. She's a gambling addict, you know, and she would spend the money and gamble the money and lose it and has nothing to bring home. She flips into a depressed state, and then suicide can kick in there.
Can you commit suicide after having won?
Well, you know, there are some people who, I mean, that is just a crazy question. There are people who just went on a spending splurge, and within a couple of weeks and months, you hear they commit suicide because they were not prepared for the largesse that they got there. And they got involved in all kinds of things. Some people have also been murdered as a result. I want you to know that. And then what creates the problem? You earn this set of money. All right, let's say you win $1 million. Whether it's through illegal gambling or illegal gambling, you win $1 million, but you owe in $500,000, and your creditors can't see you whatsoever there. Well, then they decide they're going to take you out if you will not deliver what you owe to them. So that there are a lot of issues there. Children suffer a lot. In fact, there are some husbands who spend more time in the casino than with their families.
What is gambling? How does gambling affect your mind?
It affects it in a big way. And that it drives you closer to a kind of psychotic state because you're living in a fantasy world. So what happens is like the Matrix, all right? You're living in a kind of virtual reality fantasy world where you are taught, you know, to enjoy what does not really exist. So you kind of trade shadow for substance. That is what goes on there. So that affects the cortical space of your brain because, you know, you have the operant conditioning where you throw a dice and you expect a result instantaneously. And then you have what has to happen that sometimes some people even get to the place of classical conditioning, right? Just being in the space. Fellows will tell you, well, I go in just to see all my friends enjoying it. But just go in there, all right? You're already conditioned for the gambling there. So if you go inside there, we tell gamblers, stay far from the casinos. We tell alcoholics, stay far from the rum shop because there's just, as you go in there, I mean, there's a trigger for it inside of you. You don't have to press anything like operant conditioning. It is just that you are conditioned. The mind is conditioned. And after a while, you suffer from a certain form of mental slavery. You're out of touch with reality. You know basically you will lose more than you will win. And generally when you win, you don't have the idea, well, let me stay away. All right? And you know, cut my losses, you have won and are gone. No. Yeah, there are many people who have won and they have spent all their winnings right back in the same casino. And that triggers the depression and the suicide. That triggers that.
I'm here with Pastor Clive Dottin as we speak about gambling. He is speaking from the experience, not experience of gambling, but experience with those with whom he has come in contact in the gambling industry. When we come back, we talk about how can you get out of this addiction. We'll be right back.
I can do this. It can be true. I can stand up. I can make it through. I'll be all right. So I've been told. only take your hand and don't let go, I'll be stronger, cry no longer, and I'll never wander from your love no more. And I'll be wiser now, not like before, if I only take your hand and don't let go. I can be the one I'm intended, the one that you need. And I can go beyond every circumstance when down on my knees, when I'm down on my knees. I see my way now, now that I found one who knows how, and he cares to show. And he'll protect me from all that I don't know, if I only take his hand. I do believe that I can stand, if I only take his hand. I can conquer anything, Lord, I'll simply I'll take your hand. Please don't let go. Don't let go. Don't let go. Don't ever let me go. Don't let go. If I only take your hand and don't let go.
I'm here with Pastor Clive Dottin as we talk about gambling and the Bible. Pastor Dottin, what does the Bible have to say about gambling?
Well, you know, even before there was sin, perspiration was never supposed to be a problem. Work was never supposed to be a problem. Right. Somebody said success is 1% inspiration, but 99% perspiration. And God told Adam straight in the Garden of Eden, I'm giving you these animals, I'm giving you these plants, and by the sweat of your brow you should earn bread. Right. So the book of Proverbs is replete with recommendations for hard work and getting a high off of the hard work. Not offer, going in a multicolored, glitzy place and earning money that belongs to other people, that they have worked hard. Right. So the Bible is very clear on that. I mean, the Bible glorifies hard work. It glorifies diligence. It glorifies time management. All right. It talks about consider the ant, thou sluggard.
Yes,
I mean, what a word to describe a human being. Consider the ant. It's like talking to a human being who is lazy like crazy. Consider the ant, thou sluggard. So that the issue of diligence rhyming with intelligence is what the Bible has recommended. Right. And we have got to look at that very seriously. And by the way, some people feel I could stop whenever I want to stop. You know, Mark Twain said something about tobacco smoking. Right. He says the easiest thing to stop is tobacco smoking. He said, I have stopped 1,000 times. Oh, you understand what is going on there? Now that is the characteristic of any kind of addiction whatsoever. Right. Feeling you could give it up at any time. Social drinkers tell you, well, every holiday season I drink, and then I stop for the rest for the next few months until the next holiday comes around. And that is something we call denial. So in terms of treating with gamblers, all right, the first thing you have to look for is the signs of denial. Right. Now, I don't want to tell you the profession, but I have worked with gamblers here, and I've worked with a chronic one in the media. And I will tell you, I mean, the guy was saying, you sit down in your bed at night, you can't sleep. The insomnia, the loss of appetite. You have to worry you're paying your bills because you just got the money. The children are waiting home for groceries, to have their bills paid, to have their school books bought. And between getting the salary in your hand, you are spending all that money in one night. So for 30 days, you have to borrow money. You don't know. So all you're doing is every month and paying the debts there. And he says, Pastor, I have the best of intention. I love my wife. I love my children. So what's wrong? I said, well, I want to shake you right now. You love your children, you love your wife. You just love the gambling more. Right. In other words, the materialism has got, and by the way, this world is materialistic. Right. I mean, people evaluate you that way. People see that as the symbol of success. Okay, so apart from the pretentiousness of the disco-type gambling casino, you also have that urge, all right, to get money, to splurge, all right, and to have an easy life. That is part of the carnal mind, you know.
Yeah, but let's get back to what you just said. If I have the money, and the school books are to be paid, what is it about gambling that fascinates me, that keeps me going? I mean, I know you have not been around the table except to observe, but what is about the process of gambling that makes a person decide school books, you have to wait? I just love how this wheel turns, or what it is about it that keeps them there.
Let me tell you what happens. Yeah. What the gambler tells himself is, when I win, I could treat my children and family even better. Okay. So if they just have a little patience with me, one day I'll come true. Right. I'll be the millionaire. The only problem is, in a week's time, he could burn the million back with the same gambling. Right. So one has to look at that. In terms of treating, what you mentioned here, treating the addict, in all addictions, whether it's gambling, whether it is pornography, which is an addiction, I'm telling you there, whatever it is, whether it's you have the catalyst for it is a dependent kind of personality. Right. The first thing you say is you have to admit there is a problem. In other words, the admission must clash with the denial. And you have to build the addictive quotient stronger than the denial. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to seek help. So gamblers who come to my office, I tell them, well, you have done a great thing. Okay, that you're coming here. So give yourself a couple of pats on the back, but that is just the beginning of the story. Right. And then there has to be a rewiring of the brain. Okay, you know, I'll tell you something. It is amazing. The experts psychologically and those who are involved in career planning and life coaching have discovered that the center of the brain that deals with dreaming is the same center of the brain that deals with addiction. Yes. So therefore, I conclude by, I am helping the psychologists now with all their PhDs. I am telling them now that what happens here is that we were made with an addiction to dream. But because of sin, there's a separation. Have mercy. Yes, that is what happens there. So that the third thing you have to do is rewire the person's value system.
How did you do that?
All right. And that is where the spiritual comes in. You know, it's amazing what John chapter 8 says. Only when the Son has set you free, you're free indeed.
So you are saying the only way you can help a gambler is spiritually?
Yes, it has to be spiritual. Okay. It has to be, of course, there's a psychological component. Christ met a woman who was gambling her life away in John chapter 4, and he told her God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. In other words, God is a spiritual being. So that essentially, I have dealt with thousands of cocaine addicts and marijuana addicts. And they will tell you guys who've gone to St. Anne's, guys who've gone to Cora, guys who've gone to New Life, guys who've gone to our French River Center in Matura. They say, Pastor, in the end, there's no magic formula, no pill for this, you know. It's God and God alone to help you. Of course, A is talking about the God of our understanding, but we define that God as Jesus Christ. Right. And the power of the Holy Spirit. When the Son had set you free, you're free indeed.
Why is that so important?
Because,
why is that so important?
It is important because, you see, a sinner cannot help a sinner. And that is important. And so therefore, the psychologist and the counselor who has the Holy Ghost as his prime mover, as his prime change agent, has that advantage over the others who are just secular and just dependent on pure psychology, which is sometimes a very guessing science most of the time. So, I don't want to quote a certain friend of mine on the radio, who feels sociology is the best science. But I'm saying that the issue of the Holy Ghost providing the power, because remember, the issue of habituation, forming a habit there's a certain neurological pattern in the brain, So after every act, that is developing into a habit, you have a certain arrangement of the nerve fibers. And that has to break, That has to break. In other words, we tell people, I've heard psychotherapists say, you don't break a habit, you displace the habit. You form a new neurological pattern within the brain there. And that comes by what I call incremental resistance. We tell alcoholics it's one day at a time. And if you make one day, you can make a month. If you make a month, you could make... But then we tell him, you have to study what used to give you a high. You have to take a trip up memory lane, not down memory lane. You have to figure out what used to give you a high before you met drugs, before you started to gamble. What provided euphoria? What provided the lift? What provided the excitement? All right? What honest, pure risk you used to take? Was it hiking up a steep cliff? Was it swimming out in the ocean there? What it is that really turned you on. And therefore, you can't take... To replace a habit, you can't take one with a high addictive index and replace it with one with a low addictive index. And I used to tell fellas, I used to talk Chinese. I talk Chinese in French River. I tell him you have high and lie. So you have to get something, have mercy, with a high addictive index to replace another one with a high addictive index.
So the diagnosis of the problem must not stop at addiction.
No,
you are saying it's a sinful problem.
It's a sin problem.
It's a sin problem.
And it involves all the disciplines you can think about. There's a sociological dimension. Gamblers go and they meet their friends. I could tell you, I know. I was passing through St. Martin once, and I was dealing with some of these issues there. And there are guys, that's why a hotel and a casino has such a symbiotic relationship, Because fellas don't want to go home. They want to sleep right there, to get up early in the morning to recover their losses. And the more they lose, the more they want to pay, and the hotel won't have mind because he's getting the money. It's as simple as that. So there are a lot of things that are involved here. There's a social dimension, because a lot of people gamble, they go in groups to the casino. That is the excitement in life. All right? And then there's a psychological dimension. It grips your mind. You almost feel that nothing is worth anything but the money you're going to win. It might take you a year, but you're going to win. And when that year finishes, take you another year until your back is against the wall and people are threatening you with jail, and carrying you to court. You're not paying your bills, and your family is just falling apart. I want to make this, it is clear to me. Who suffers more than anybody else, or the gambler, is the family, the children. All right? And sometimes it leads to divorce. There are fractured relationships with this thing because people realize they are being displaced by a pernicious habit that looks harmless, but it really takes over the brain.
Wow. So, Pastor, with all of what you've said, there's hope for the gambler.
There's hope for the gambler. Right. And I have seen gamblers, all right, even in crusades, even in personal counseling, I have seen gamblers overcome the habit. I read one of the books that's selling downstairs at the ABC, but I think it's Melgosa, where he spoke about the issue of an alcoholic, addict. And one day, the children asked the mother, but why we can't get shoes and food regularly, all right? And the mother told him, you could find your shoes and your groceries inside the bottle. So the little boy took a stone and mashed up the bottle. So the father asked him, why? I'll beat you to death. He said, why I did that? He said, why you did that? He said, Mommy, tell me I'll find the shoes and groceries inside there. That was the end of the alcoholism for the father. It struck him. So there's a creativity that has to be involved, not stoning, everything, but it's a creativity to be involved in that kind of thing. And then one as a counselor, you have to be positive with the individual. And there is something we call in psychology called family intervention therapy, where you try to discover who is the MIP, which is the most important person in the gambler's life.
Right.
And the counseling must be a group counseling. By the way, there's also a support group called Gamblers Anonymous. Huh?
Okay,
I don't know if we have one in Trinidad right now, but I know that is on the cards for the future. Gamblers Anonymous is an internationally accepted group like Narcotic Anonymous and Alcoholic Anonymous.
Pastor Dottin, we have 30 seconds to wrap this thing up.
Yes.
Before somebody who's owning a casino,
Yes.
watching this telecast,
Yes.
touched the dial and said, I don't want to hear any more of this because you are putting me out of business.
Yes.
And before the gambler goes back to the casino, what is that word you want to share with them to give them a sense of hope, to give them an alternative? 30 seconds.
I want to tell even the casino owner, and I want to tell the gambler that when the Son has set you free, you're free indeed. And God provides the hope, and God provides the liberation from the slavery. Only He can do it. A sinner cannot help a sinner. It takes the sinless one to help the sinner. And there is hope.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Dottin, for taking the time. I'm sure you'll
God
come
bless.
back again.
Yeah, sure.
And you don't have to gamble to come back. Just come back. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. My advice, put your treasure where you want your heart to be. If it's right now in the casino, then take it from there and put it where Jesus is. And there your heart will be also. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. We look forward to having you once again on JC 24/7.